Welcome back to Let the Quran Speak. We've all been there. We've offered advice to someone only to watch him or her get upset or ignore us and make the wrong decision. What are we doing wrong? What is the best way to offer advice? How can we ensure we are offering advice for the right reasons? And when is it most appropriate to remain silent? We speak with Dr. Shabir Ali, President of the Islamic Information Center, on how to offer advice. Now, Dr. Shabir Ali, it seems like there's an appropriate and an inappropriate way to offer advice. So can you please share with us what are the appropriate ways?
Well, the appropriate ways should be guided by the general principle that we do not want to upset the other person. We want the other person to benefit from the advice and repair his or her deeds, correct whatever was in need of correction. In the Quran, in the second chapter, we read that there are certain people who, whenever you say to them, ittaqillah, which means fear God or be aware of your duty to God, his honor or his pride seizes him in sin, فَحَسْبُهُ جَهَنَّمْ, and his part will be the hell. So we don't want to prompt the person to go in that direction, obviously. So then if that's our general guide, we want to make it easy for the other person to swallow. Well, how do we do it? One way is to speak indirectly. It is mentioned that whenever the Prophet, peace be upon him, whenever he saw something going wrong, or people doing something wrong, he wouldn't tell them directly, but he would save that up. And when he addressed the community from the pulpit, he would say something like, "What's wrong with a people such that they do this and that?"
Of course, you don't want to sound passive aggressive, right? You want to you want to give your advice, but you don't want to sound as if you're trying to refer to something else at the same time.
Yes, you want to make sure that the person gets the message one way or another. But the better way is such that they will receive the message and act upon it. So this is one way that the Prophet, peace be upon him, spoke about it indirectly. If we need to address the person directly, one may cushion one's statement by first of all admitting that one has faults as well. You know, we are all human beings, we all have faults, I have mistakes too, and naturally if there's a mistake that you notice of mine, I would expect you to point it out to me because we are friends. And there is something that I want to mention to you, and I hope you won't take it the wrong way. Here it is. That's another way.
The fact that you mentioned friends is important, right? You need to know the person that you're giving advice to. You need to understand what makes them tick. You need to know their personality. You don't give the same sort of advice to every sort of person.
Yes, you try to find ways of approach. If you don't have good relations with a person such that you can offer that advice and it will go down well, you may seek an intermediary. You might talk to somebody else who knows how to talk to that person. Another way of doing it is to basically ask a question. Are you sure are you sure you want to do it that way? For example, and that could help the person to think, because if they think about it and they arrive at their own conclusion, that's better than you're telling them, because sometimes people don't like to be told. Sometimes you can lead by example. Just do the thing the right way, and hoping that the other person will see it and then realize that they've been doing it the wrong way. An interesting story is told about the grandsons of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that they noticed a man not doing his washings before the prayer in the right way. So one of them said to him, just look at the way I'm doing my washing and tell me if I'm doing it right. So he is the elder, here is the grandson of the Prophet. Elders don't like to be told off by youngsters. So by putting him on a pedestal, like you are the elder, you can teach me, that obviously gave him the opportunity to observe carefully how the ablution is done by this young man. And in the end he said, you're right, you're doing it the right way. But that of course means that now he knows for himself what is the right way.
Are people who sin allowed to give advice? Because sometimes people who are committing wrong themselves feel like they shouldn't be giving advice. Or sometimes someone receiving the advice will say, well, who are you to tell me what to do when you're doing this and this and this wrong?
Of
So
course,
how do you
it'll be
deal with that?
hypocritical. It'll be hypocritical to be doing a certain wrong, and then at the same time telling another person you shouldn't do that wrong thing, because the obvious retort will be, well, why don't you fix yourself first? But regardless of the retort, one doesn't feel good telling somebody else to stop doing that wrong if the person himself is doing the same thing wrong. But your question is more general. Suppose we're committing one sin, does that mean we cannot tell another person to stop doing another sin? And and the answer is that there's nothing to prevent you, and in fact you should tell the other person, because human beings are by definition sinners. We all sin in some way, and just because we sin in some way does not mean that we have no moral principles at all, and it doesn't mean that we don't recognize wrong at all. And when we do recognize wrong, we should try to fix it. So if somebody is doing something wrong, we should give them advice, even if we happen to be doing some other things wrong. Now, in the Jamaat Tabligh, the group that emphasizes giving the message of Islam to others, it is accepted as a general principle that the preachers are not perfect, and that the preacher should intend by their message that they're telling themselves first before telling others. So that if they condemn sin and they preach about being good, they're preaching to themselves first rather than to others. So with this mindset, one has the license then to speak out against a wrong, even if it happens to be that you're doing the same wrong. In fact, along the same lines, it is mentioned that one of the great scholars from the Indo-Pakistan subcontinent, Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi, used to say that whenever he noticed a defect in himself, he would plan his Friday sermon on the same topic, because by doing that, he would not only be addressing the crowd and telling them that this thing is wrong, but he would be addressing himself, and he would be the first person to benefit from this.
So in this way, you're checking your ego, right? You're not giving advice for the sake of seeming better than other people, but you're doing it first for yourself.
Exactly, and of course, preachers of Islam, if they do not benefit from their messages themselves, then they should ask themselves about the sincerity of their deliverance. Is the message really for the other people, or is it something that we ourselves need to live up to on our own? Verses of the Quran condemn a sort of hypocritical behavior. For example, in the 61st chapter of the Quran, the verse asks at the beginning, لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ Why do you say that which you do not do? كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ It is a tremendous thing in the sight of God that you are saying something that you don't do. So we have to walk the talk. We have to act according to our own stated principles. And if we are preaching to others to stop doing wrong, then we have to stop doing wrong as well.
Is it ever appropriate to remain silent and not give advice?
If one finds that in a certain situation giving the advice will lead to more harm than good, then one would naturally want to be silent. In some of the classical books, it is mentioned that sometimes a person may be in danger for his own life if he speaks against the power of the day. And one would then have a sort of license or permission to not put oneself in danger unnecessarily by speaking out. Yet, at the same time, it is considered highly meritorious for one to speak truth to power. And in a hadith attributed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, it is said that the greatest jihad, the greatest struggle, is to speak the truth to a tyrant.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break, and when we return, we will answer questions we received from you, our viewers.